You're now watching Sports Bettor's Paradise on the Bet Rivers Network.
All right, Jimmy Ott, Paul Stone, talking college football, talking about the big wins as we get into the heart of the schedule. And we've got some games that, quite frankly, we've been talking about since the summertime, since the springtime. Paul Stone's been betting on them since January. So and let's start at the top of the list. And the new Big Ten, we've been looking at this one for quite some time. The interesting thing here is that minus this game in Eugene with Ohio State going to Oregon in this new conference matchup, all of the other games before and after, these two teams should be favored in all of those games. Ohio State is a road favorite here, 3.5 and 53 at Eugene. Two teams, like we said, with high expectations, high preseason rankings, and very favorable paths to a college football playoff with the 12-team, the expanded 12-team. But Gabriel this year, two teams, two teams with two new quarterbacks, and Dylan Gabriel coming over from Oklahoma, and, of course, Will Howard coming over from Kansas State. And Gabriel was having a lot more success last year than Will Howard. But, when you lose to Michigan 3 years in a row, you kind of nudge the guy out. And he's at Syracuse, and he's having a heck of a season this year, minus a couple of bumps in a home loss on a Friday night at Stanford. The Ohio State transfer is doing just fine at Syracuse, giving UNLV their first loss of the year. The running back tandem of Judkins and Henderson is powerful for Iowa State, to say the least. They're also you're talking about getting the Reds as far as they really pushed on their boosters to get a big budget for the transfer portal, and they assembled as might be the most talented group, most talented roster this year in the country. Ohio State 3.5, 53. But when I look at these teams too, Paul, I do like their defenses a little bit more than we usually talk about a lot of their offenses. Ohio State, both of them, you have to look at their schedules a little bit. The one true test on offense, and the running back from Boise State, he gave them all they can handle. They outgained Oregon and Eugene earlier. But these two quarterbacks, both of them, including Gabriel, who was so productive the last couple of years, and he was productive before that in Central Florida and Orlando, they've kind of been slow to we're not seeing that just big explosive play after explosive play. A couple of turnovers last Friday night. Oh, by the way, hope you had Michigan State on that late decision to kick the field goal. But Ohio State 3.5 and 53. Both aren't hitting on all cylinders just yet. And it takes some time to get used to the new pieces. But similar teams, similar paths, similar situations here in this game at Eugene. Road favorite here, Ohio State 3.5 and 53.
Yeah, in my opinion, Ohio State, Jimmy's got the best roster overall in college football. You give me one team to win the national title, and I'm taking the Buckeyes. College football fans, as you indicated, we've been talking about this game for months. Been talking about it since the way back in the spring. You've got the Buckeyes traveling to the Pacific Northwest to play Oregon in Alton Stadium, one of the loudest venues in all of college football. These teams have not disappointed. Ohio State comes in at number 2, I believe. Oregon at number 3. It's what the sport's all about. And as you indicated, quarterback play has maybe not been quite what either of these teams had hoped for to this point. Hadn't been bad, but hadn't been perhaps championship level. And I think on Saturday it's going to come down to quarterback play. If Ohio State's Will Howard, who has had the propensity to throw an interception here and there, if he can avoid the turnover bug on the road, I think the Buckeyes probably win. On the other hand, if Dylan Gabriel, if he plays like he did last year on the second Saturday in October for those Oklahoma Sooners against the Texas Longhorns in that Oklahoma victory, one of the better individual performances of the entire 2023 season, then the Ducks might surprise the Buckeyes there at Outson. For me, it's too close to call. For me, no opinion. But, man, this is a great game. Look forward to watching it Saturday night.
I'm leaning toward Ohio State here, minus the 3.5, but I like the under better in this matchup. So I think that the branding here is we expecting a sort of a track meet. That's not the case. These defenses still at this stage of the season, and we should see where the offenses are starting to get into gear. But I think it's the new quarterbacks with their new pieces, and they're still getting kind of their feet. Ohio State in a couple of conference games really they did it with defense. Oregon lately has been doing it with defense as well. So I think yards are going to be a little bit tougher to come by in this one. So I like Ohio State minus 3.5, but I really like the under 53. Ohio State and Oregon. Penn State, USC, last time these two matched up in Los Angeles, it wasn't this venue. It was at the Rose Bowl, 52-49. Sam Darnold and the USC Trojans win a wild win against Trace McSorley and Saquon Barkley. James Franklin, what a Rose Bowl that was, 52-49. So we've been looking at this one for quite some time. And, well, Penn State, they are undefeated coming in. USC has lost a couple, but USC certainly more battle-tested, having played LSU at Michigan, Wisconsin, at Minnesota. The new and improved defense, it's better, but Rome was not built in a day as well. So, and that really cost them their lack of tackling against Michigan, because Michigan would not have been able to just grind it out with that little time on the clock. It won with a last-minute touchdown. So Penn State comes to the Drew Aller. He looked to be much improved in that first game against West Virginia, but they've been really selective with him. Only 20 attempts a game in their 5-0 start. He's being very efficient in those selected attempts. 11 yards an attempt and a 9-1 TD to interception ratio. Moss, on the other hand, a lot of underneath stuff for Lincoln Riley. Just 7 yards an attempt, 9-4 TD to interception ratio. More battle tests against a better team. Penn State, here we go, is one of those games. They're 5.5 and 48 on the road in the Coliseum against USC.
Yeah, as you mentioned, USC traveled to Minnesota this past weekend, lose to the Gophers 24-17, and now they face a Penn State team at home, a Penn State team that really hasn't faced a serious challenge to this point, but is certainly taking care of business through its first 5 games. They did have a pretty, good test, that opener, traveling to Morgantown to play West Virginia, won that game 34-12, really dominated that game in all phases. It was close for about a quarter and a half, and then Penn State started kind of exerting its will and showing who was the superior team, and that was just a thoroughly impressive victory by the Nittany Lions there. Some college football fans, you talked about Drew Aller. He's kind of I don't want to say necessarily a punching bag, but a lot of people kind of critique him, a lot of Penn State fans, much in the same fashion as they did Sean Clifford, a former Penn State quarterback there. And some of the critiquing is probably fair. He's going to have to throw the ball downfield to win some big-time championship-type games. But for his career, a season and a half, Drew Aller's thrown 38 touchdowns, rather. Let me get this right. That'd be a lot of interceptions. 38 touchdowns, only 3 interceptions in his career. So he takes care of the football, like you said, is efficient. They protect him pretty well in what they ask him to do. Only averaging 7.4 yards an attempt for his career, which is pretty average. But still, he's not a liability, but he is going to have to get better in that downfield passing game. But that interception rate of only 0.54%. So his interception rate's only 0.5%. The college average probably just a little bit over 2%. So he really takes care of the football. I don't really have a strong opinion here. You've got a USC team. You would have to expect that they fire their best shot here. They've got 2 conference losses. They can ill afford another conference loss. You've got a Penn State team that has to go across the country in this new look Big Ten, going from the Eastern time zone to the Pacific time zone. So that's an interesting dynamic. Penn State has tended to thrive in these type of games, but I'm going to kind of wait and see. If it gets a little bit lower, maybe at 4, I might take Penn State, but right now for me it's a pass.
What I saw in Aller in week 1 when we were out in Las Vegas, Paul, is I saw an improved quarterback. Now it's just been kind of almost put on pause a little bit, but this is, that was a game that we thought was a tough one, going to Morgantown. An old rivalry there. West Virginia. Now West Virginia was very sloppy in that game. And we don't want to overreact to ugly offensive football, but he looked good in that game. And, quarterbacks with time, they should and they can develop. So I think this is another one of those spots where, okay, this is a proving ground. This is almost one that maybe he has. You want to talk about if Penn State's for real? And look, if there was a 12-team playoff the last 10 years, what Penn State's been in the playoffs, 6 of the 10. They beat the teams they're supposed to. This is one they're supposed to beat. It's a light lean toward Penn State. And I think Aller, we look at yards per attempt, TD's interception ratio in this game, I think he could have a really good game. USC is a little bit streaky. They were dead against Wisconsin, down 11 and punting in the third quarter. And, man, Wisconsin fumbles a punt, their own territory, and then the roof caves in on them. A linebacker picked 6 to put it over the number in that Wisconsin game. And then they go and lose to Minnesota. So I'm curious. I think he has a chance to improve this year. And so we'll see. He sure looked good in Morgantown. Let's see how he does this time in Southern California. Ole Miss and LSU, a lot of history in this one. And speaking of history, a lot of people like to get on Lane Kiffin, and boy, they were quick to shred him up. Well, that might be because of Lane Kiffin's, his personality. I mean, he is a little bit of a Twitter troll. He is, he's got his off the field issues that have cost him maybe the chance at some bigger jobs. But that Florida job is, some Belt Billy's kind of treading water over there a little bit lately, winning a couple of games. But a lot of people are linking him to that job. He has done everything he can at Ole Miss. Keep in mind, once they went to an expansion of 12 teams when Arkansas and South Carolina came into the league, Ole Miss has never been to the SEC championship game. No, let's keep it to the SEC. SEC's pretty tough in this era, right? Well, Lane Kiffin's conference winning percentage, his SEC winning percentage is the best 3-year run since Johnny Vaught. Johnny Vaught, that run was 1962, Paul. So it's been quite some time. So, not all SEC programs, not all college football programs are created equally with their resources. And this guy is squeezing as much damn juice out the orange that he can in Oxford, Mississippi. And he has his most complete team. Hey, lack of maturity, lack of respect for your opponent when they had 3 first-half stops against Kentucky, which had late penalties that extended drives, that kept their defense on the field, that kept Kentucky in the game a little bit more. And then when it came to it, Kentucky made a play. Ole Miss didn't. So, but how did they respond against a team coming off of a capable team coming off the bye? And they responded great. They throttled South Carolina. I was wrong. I did very well last week, but that one was wrong, and that was my favorite pick in college football last year, South Carolina at home, getting healthy off of a bye. And now they go into LSU. And LSU and South Carolina, that was a different story in Columbia. And we're not going to be too foolish just to connect the dots this year in college football. That'll get you in trouble. But Ole Miss, offensively, they're good. Guess what? LSU's very good defensively. Nussmeier, man, one of the leaders in touchdown passes, 15 this year. And he's distributing the ball, and he's getting pass protection. On defense, that's a different story. And LSU, which traditionally has had very good defense, is not good on defense, period. Not only are they not good, they're not. They're a little bit banged up as well. Losing Harold Perkins, who was underutilized and misused in their system, and he is out for the season with a torn ACL. The Ole Miss front 4 dominated South Carolina, holding them out of the end zone the entire game, and they have been good all season. Well, I'm only going to count South Carolina in Kentucky because, damn it, that cream puff schedule, we ain't giving them any credit for that. But this is the difference, and this is where on paper it is translated to the field. Their defensive front and their defense is way better than they've been, and it's way better than LSU's. Dart, 12 yards an attempt, 13-2 TD interception ratio. He's going to run the ball as well. He's tough. He'll run behind his pads. Nussmeier's going to get his as well. But the difference in this one is the defense. Unusual, not common for a Lane Kiffin team to have a defense, but that's the difference. I like Ole Miss minus the 3.5.
Yeah, this is, first of all, looking from LSU's perspective, playing at home here, this is the start of a critical Three-game stretch for the Tigers after hosting Ole Miss this Saturday night at Tiger Stadium. LSU has to go to Arkansas and Texas A&M. Those are a couple of teams that are starting to hit their stride, it appears. But first things first, obviously this is a huge game for both teams. LSU's 4-1 on the season. Fans in Columbia, South Carolina might say 3-2, but they really haven't been at their best against the top two teams on their schedule, in my opinion, to this point. The two USCs, Southern California in the opener, and then the game at South Carolina where they came back and won that contest. On paper, I think Ole Miss, like you said, they clearly have a superior talent on defense. That's where it comes down to. And as you also indicated, the Rebels historically, Lane Kiffin teams known for offense. You don't think so much defense when you think of his teams, but the portal, at least somewhat, has changed that, and the Rebels really did a great job in the portal in the offseason as far as fortifying their roster and supplementing their roster. This game's going to be played under the lights at Tiger Stadium, and that's a little bit of my concern. You look at the Tigers since the start of the 2017 season there in Baton Rouge, that 2017 season at Orgeron's first in Baton Rouge, LSU 7-2-1 against the spread as a home underdog, getting 3.5 here against Ole Miss. I think Ole Miss, the better team here, but I don't want to step in front of LSU. This is just one of those situations, one of those environments where I think it's gonna come tough for the road team, and they very well might win. But for now, I'm on the sideline on this one.
Oh, it'll be popping in Tiger Stadium on Saturday night. But I think just the more talented team, and it's just an indication. Brian Kelly's got his staff ready to recruit now. He's got a bunch of killers. There'll be a top 5 class this February, but he has been basically he hasn't done a good job, to say the least, in that respect. That's why he's hired some guys that he has passed on previously when he took the job a couple of years ago. Speaking of schedules, well, is there anything that the SEC office screwed up more than this? I mean, Oklahoma. Well, they made sure that the Oklahoma and Texas join the league. So the other 14 teams, 7 will play Texas, 7 will play Oklahoma. Well, I mean, one got a 1A schedule and one got a Texas 6A schedule. I mean, Texas gets the lighter schedule. They didn't actually play Murderers Row defensively. Non-conference. Colorado State. Michigan 2024. Not Michigan 2023, but Michigan 2024. They'll win about half of the games that they won last year, 7 or 8 compared to the 15 last year. Texas, San Antonio, UM Monroe is the worst team Mississippi State has had in my lifetime. That's another one as well. So now maybe Arkansas and A&M can salvage that schedule strength just a little bit at the end as they're both starting to heat up. This line indicates that as well. Now, Texas 15.5. It's now 16.5 right now at Bet Rivers. 16.5, 50.5. Neutral site game. That's another advantage for Texas. You play 4 road conference games. One is in Dallas. One is in Vandy. Well, no, all of a sudden Nashville, that's Murderers Row now. In Nashville, you're trying to dig up the goalpost from the Cumberland River. But, Paul, you may think that this just may be a little bit too many points in this one. 16.5 right now at Bet Rivers.
Yeah, first of all, one could argue that Texas has looked like, top-ranked Texas, has looked like the most complete team in all of college football through the season's first month and change. They've got the quarterback, actually 2 quarterbacks, I guess, and they don't really have any glaring weaknesses. You could maybe point to the running game. That room was ravaged by injuries in the preseason, and they're not a great running football team at this point by any stretch. You look at their opponent on Saturday, Oklahoma. They enter with a 4-1 record, but it hasn't been a particularly pretty 4-1. You look at their home loss to Tennessee, 25-15. They were never really in that game. The final score much closer than the game was really played there. They were outgained in mostly uninspiring one-score victories over Houston, and then this past week at Auburn. But what it comes down to is this is the second Saturday in October. This is the Red River Showdown at the Cotton Bowl. Got the State Fair of Texas in the backdrop, and funny things can happen in this game. And if you've never been to this game, listeners and viewers, certainly put it on your bucket list. It is a must-go-to game. As I indicated, crazy things can happen in this series. For instance, back in 1996, which was the first season of a fairly short tenure for John Blake, the late John Blake, there as Oklahoma's head coach. Oklahoma lost their first 4 games in 1996. They entered this game as a 20.5-point underdog. They exited this game with a 30-27 victory over Texas. Their quarterback that day, I'm pretty sure, I didn't look this up, but I know he started most of the year, so I'm almost certain he started this game. I know Jimmy will recognize the name, as will many listeners and viewers out there. Oklahoma's starting quarterback that day, I'm sure, was Justin Fuente, who later became the head coach at Memphis and then later Virginia Tech, now an analyst, I believe, at the University of Indiana. But funny things can happen. I'm not suggesting that Oklahoma is going to win the game on Saturday. But as you indicated, Texas, they did win the game at Michigan in week 2, but it was week 2. I think Michigan's better today than they were then. And as you indicated, they're certainly not anywhere near the same outfit that they were last year. So maybe that victory has a little more significance because of Michigan's brand than what they're putting on the field. So one, again, could kind of contend that Texas really hadn't played anybody. 14.5 points, a lot of points. Give me the Sooners plus 14.5 over Texas Saturday in Dallas.
One stat that I know it's a stat, and I know they won, but you want to talk about, and I have a bunch of Auburn friends, and they are scratching their head, and they got some problems on the Plains. We know about that. Auburn out first down Oklahoma in that game, 26-11. 26-11. I mean, that is usually when you see a box score like that, it's 47-13 or something like that. But it's Oklahoma is trying to regroup, and they just gave him. Venables got a sweet deal. Some people were scratching their heads, but he did well last year. And look, they won this game last year. Keep in mind. They won this game, and Oklahoma has usually had the better hand in this matchup. Texas year, but I just don't know. Texas can't do any more than what they've been faced with, Paul. But how do we know? How do we know? College football is about who you play, and so because there's such a disparity on the different teams. All right, Kansas State and Colorado, another road favorite here. Kansas State 4.5, 56.5 against Colorado. Man, I was impressed with Colorado going down to Orlando and just handling up on Central Florida in that spot. The field rush fade game. If they rush the field, man, you have that much emotion. Well, you got that much less in the tank when you go to your next game. They went and just destroyed Gus Malzahn's Central Florida Golden Knights. Now Kansas State comes here, and we talk about just a tad bit difference, contrast in styles, coaching-wise. I'm talking about just how they present themselves and everybody else. Nobody's going to confuse Coach Prime with Chris Kleiman, but boy, they've got their different ways to doing it. But is Coach Prime privately, kind of quietly putting together a pretty good season? At least they have a chance if they could pull a win here.
Yeah, this is a big game for both teams. But like you said, Colorado, they're in position. They've got an opportunity to have a really, perhaps even a special season. First of all, looking from Kansas State's perspective, it is a small sample size, but dating back to the beginning of last season, Kansas State, they have failed to cover their last 5 games as a road favorite. They've lost 3 of those games outright, and that includes the 38-9 defeat at BYU back on September 21st. Meanwhile, Colorado and its polarizing head coach Deion Sanders, they've been really solid as an underdog in his season and a half at the helm. They're 7-3 against the spread as the betting underdog under Sanders, and that includes 3-0 against the spread as a home underdog last season, which they will be here Saturday in Boulder against Kansas State. Colorado, they're a passing team. They throw the ball on 62% of their offensive plays. and they have one of the nation's top receiving core without question, in my mind, led by Travis Hunter, the two-way standout, 46 catches for 561 yards, 6 touchdowns. If he keeps this pace, he's headed for a 1,000-yard receiving season, even though he plays most of the snaps on defense as well, which is just really incredible. He's kind of one of those generational type players, as we like to say. Meanwhile, Kansas State, they're not all that great against the pass. They rank 89th nationally in yards allowed per pass attempt. They allow 7.9 yards per attempt. So I really like that fundamental advantage for Colorado, the fact that I feel like they'll be able to throw the ball a little bit against Kansas State. I look for Shedeur Sanders and company to have a big game. I think Colorado's got an excellent chance to win this game. I like the Buffaloes plus 4.5 over Kansas State.
All right, the Buffaloes at 4.5 with the number on that one. So don't forget our friends over at Bet Rivers can place same game parlays on college football and NFL games to earn squares. Our exclusive Squares games offers additional chances at profit boost, bonus bets, and many $10,000 jackpots. Visit BetRivers.com or the BetRivers app for more details. Paul Stone and I, each and every week, breaking down the top games in college football and our best bets on the rest of the card later on in the week. Good luck to you. For Paul Stone, I'm Jimmy Ott on the Bet Rivers Network, Sports Bettor's Paradise.